Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our talk called Nutrition and Stress Management, two things that you don't always hear talked about together. My name is Landrie Ethredge. I'm a mental health professional with a private practice in Charleston, South Carolina. I do monthly workshops on various mental health topics that's open to any woman located anywhere in the world. So we usually have that on the second Sunday of each month. Today, I am joined by Alexa Aboudaram, who is a nutritionist, also here in Charleston, South Carolina. She is an FNTP, which I'll let her explain sort of what that means. But basically, she works with clients, helping them make wise food choices based on their lifestyle and symptoms they might be having. I know I definitely get lost in the world of nutrition, and Alexa has helped me as well. In addition to being a nutritionist, she's also my sister. So I'm extra excited to do this workshop with her, a way to kind of partner me sort of on the mental health side and Alexa on the nutrition sort of physical side. So it's sort of a perfect partnership that's been waiting to happen. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Alexa. And Alexa, if you can just share with us, what does FNTP mean and how you got into nutrition?
Hey guys, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Landrie, for having me. As Landrie mentioned, I am a nutritionist, FNTP. I have a nutrition coaching business called Navigating Nutrients, where I help clients who are just overwhelmed or frustrated with their health journey to break down nutrition into doable steps so that it just seems more achievable. I have a background in biology. I have a bachelor's in biology, and the first half of my career was actually focused on animals. I was a zookeeper and a vet tech. Specifically, I was the head primate keeper, where I was not just in charge of the health and well-being of all the primates, but also their nutrition and diet there. But after a few years of working as a zookeeper, I started having some health problems of my own. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that targets my thyroid called Hashimoto's, and also struggled with some chronic infections, had a lot of surgeries, and all my doctors told me, there's nothing I could do. It was just going to get worse for the rest of my life. And, just keep taking your medicine and that's it. But with a great tip, I was told, change your diet, maybe this might help. And after doing so, it just blew my mind how much my life changed. My symptoms just went away. I mean, it was life altering. So that opened the world of nutrition for me, and I dove in and have been obsessed with it ever since. Basically just learning and telling other people, teaching other people how food really does impact our bodies and really determines how our bodies function. But going back to the question of what is, and for short, FNTP, basically, it's just a type of nutritionist. So I specifically look at nutrition with a few different foundations, which are that I'm going to be looking for the root cause of any symptoms that you have. So I'm not going to treat your symptoms. I'm going to actually view those symptoms as signs that your body is trying to tell me something. Maybe your organs need support, or a system in your body needs support. And I'm going to really try to find the root of that problem. And then we address those problems with a food first approach. So a nutrient dense diet and a whole foods diet. But we know that there's a lot of categories within that diet, within that. So basically, I mean, there's meats and fish and eggs and dairy and different kind of vegetables, the starchy ones, the non-starchy ones, and nuts, seeds, gluten, different kinds of grains. So within that, there is a wide range of foods. And that leads me to my next point, which is one of my foundations is that we are all very unique and bio-individual. And so we each require different foods than each other. My ancestry is different than yours. My life experience are different than yours. My past diet has an effect on, how my organs are working right now. My present diet, of course, sleep, light, stress, activity level, all of this comes together and really defines what your diet should be. So it's different for every single person. So basically that sums up how I view nutrition. So that's basically what an FNTP is.
Right. And you mentioned the word stress, and everybody's stress level looks different. So when you think about, and I have a certain concept of stress, obviously as a therapist, but when you hear the word stress from a nutritional standpoint, what stands out to you?
Yes. So exactly what I said is stress really does have an impact on your health and, what you should be eating. But specifically, what I think is the most important things that have to do with stress and food is that stress pushes you to eat specific foods. And that's how we are hardwired. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And stress changes how our bodies react to food, how they digest food, and then what those cravings do to us, what the effects of those foods are on our bodies. And then I'm just going to give you some tips of how to manage stress with food. So kind of what we should be eating and what we should be avoiding.
Gotcha. So talking about that, kind of mentioning stress from these two different perspectives, from as a nutritional professional, as a mental health professional, I thought we could kind of do this exercise all together, all of us. There's sort of this concept that I use with clients, and I call it the stress bucket. We all have this bucket, and it has all of our stress in it. And so I'll have clients literally draw out a bucket, which I'd like us to all do now. If you have that piece of paper, I'll do it with you. Let me grab my notebook here. We're just going to draw a big bucket. Just a quick sketch, doesn't have to be anything great. So I'm going to draw this big bucket here. And that bucket is sitting on a scale. And so when I ask clients to do this, I have them, tell me, on a scale of 0 to 10, where is your stress today, right now in this moment? And so, for me, I might think about, the week ahead of me, any relational conflict. Okay, I'm sitting here in front of a camera, so there's a little bit of stress about that. So, I might say today I'm a 4 or so. So you can write down, okay, I'm a 4 out of 10, or, from 0 to 10, where are you right now? And in that bucket, my little sketch of a bucket, I don't know if you can see it, it's beautiful. Just jot a few things down that are stressors for you. So, I've got a whole bunch of clients this week, so a full schedule, maybe I'll put that. Maybe a tough conversation I need to have with a friend, or maybe there's financial stress, or maybe whatever it might be. So car trouble, whatever it is, you can jot down a couple of things that are stressors for you. And so that's a way that I help clients kind of identify, that's why I blew up at my boyfriend yesterday, because you're carrying all of these things with you. And sometimes when you sit down and realize, there's actually quite a bit in my bucket that I didn't realize I was carrying with me throughout the day. Alexa, how would you add to that?
Yeah, so that's a great activity. I just want to add, I do want to add to that, because that's a lot of mental stress that you just listed. And we often forget about our physical stresses. But our bodies react to physical stress in much of the same way that as it does mental stress. So I do want to list a few more things that you can probably add to your bucket, see if you can. So things like poor quality of sleep, if you're waking up at night, or just not getting enough sleep in general, poor hydration, lack of movement. So if you're sitting for more than 4 hours at a time, that's putting stress on your body. If you have any kind of, underlying health problems like diabetes, autoimmune disease, something like that. Poor gut health. I'm sure you've heard the term leaky gut, or if you're having symptoms like bloating or reflux, diarrhea, that kind of stuff, that's signs that something else is going on in your body. Or if you're eating foods that are inflammatory or that your body is sensitive to. Things like, vegetable oils, fried foods, refined carbs, sugar, and then definitely things like alcohol and caffeine that need to be filtered through your
You've
body.
already mentioned a few things that I've added to my bucket. So for me, sitting for long periods of time, as a therapist, I typically sit for long periods of time throughout the day. Definitely a caffeine, alcohol is in there. So there's, I guess, stressors that we're not even really aware of, that our body is dealing with, that I would imagine are also showing themselves as physical stress. So, having a shorter temper or mood swings. Anytime that we talk about, when we're addressing issues, I think it's helpful to have an idea of what healthy actually looks like. So, we know what unhealthy looks like. It means maybe like a panic attack or not functioning well. But what is like when you're thinking of a stressed state versus a relaxed state, what is the ideal that resting or relaxed state look like in comparison to like a stressed state?
Yeah, so to understand that, we have to understand a little bit about our nervous system. So basically we have our sympathetic state, which we're probably going to call our stress state just during this hour, just to make it more easy. And then we have our parasympathetic state, which is the state where our body is relaxed. So you are either in one of these two states. So our sympathetic state, our stress state, is going to be our fight or flight state. And when our body is in this state, it goes into protection mode. So all of our body's resources are going to go into protecting our body. And I'm going to explain this by kind of going back into like hunter-gatherer days. So in our body would be going into a stress state if we were like getting chased by a predator, or maybe we are chasing prey, something like this. It had to do more with survival back then. But our body really hasn't learned the difference between, surviving and, let's say, having stress at your job, or financial stress, relationship stress. So our body reacts to this stress in the same way, which is going in protection mode. So that's our flight or fight stage. And then we have our parasympathetic state, and that's where our body is able to rest, digest, repair, and reproduce. So in this state, our body's putting our resources towards making our nails stronger, making our hair stronger, producing sex hormones so that our menstrual cycles can be regular. And digesting our food, that's a big one too. So if you're in this parasympathetic state, that's the state where we want to be in the majority of the time. So that's going to be be crucial to understanding everything else we're going to talk about, basically.
And again, you again mentioned some things that I experienced personally. nails that are not particularly strong. I deal with a lot of like gut bloat. And I would love to hear your thoughts on cravings. And yeah, why do we have cravings? Because I know for myself, when I'm super stressed or I hit that like afternoon slump, I tend to want to go for sugar or, things that are maybe not the best. So where do
Yeah.
cravings come in, or sugar
Yeah. And,
cravings?
sometimes we're hard on ourselves because we're like, oh, I can't kick this craving. I just always want it. Or we think like, oh, well, that's just me, like that's who I am. I'm just the kind of person who's addicted to this kind of food. But really it's when we're stressed, it's our biology that's telling us to take in more calories and to take in more sugar, because our body is hardwired to doing that, because we need those calories in order to survive that stress state. So our body is trying to bring in as much energy resources as possible. So that's why we eat when we're stressed, basically. It's because our body's telling us to, in order to survive. But as well as I do, that we're not just craving any foods, it's really specific foods. So we are craving foods that our body innately thinks have more calories, things that will, we can eat a little bit and we can make a lot of that. And back in the day, again, like hunter-gatherer, those things would be like nuts or something like that. But now, since we have refined foods and things like that, our body's craving these foods. They were not even available back then, but now they are. So our body automatically thinks, okay, what's the thing that's going to have, the most calories? That's a cookie now. So we're going to eat, a box of cookies. So that is why we automatically are, wanting these foods.
Yeah. Quick question. How did you know that I finished off my cookies today? Is what I would so what are some foods that are, it sounds like you're equating our cravings to sugar. So what are some foods that are high in sugar that we might not be aware of?
Yeah. So basically, sugars in everything. I'm going to go ahead and mention this thing about sugar, which is that it's actually addicting. So there are some studies that I know of. There's one in particular where they had two groups of rats, and they got one group of rats addicted to cocaine and the other group of rats addicted to heroin. And over a few months, they were given these drugs. And then they gave these rats the option of a sugar substance instead of the drugs that they were on. And within 2 days, they were fully addicted to the sugar over the other drugs and had stopped taking the other drugs, which is crazy. And then there's dozens and dozens of studies out there to show that sugar is addicting. And food corporations know this, and they're well aware of these studies, and they're using it for their own agenda. They want to get you hooked on their foods. It's, one of their ways of making you buy their foods instead of the one that's exactly like it, that's sitting on the shelf next to it, right? So they put it in foods that we probably wouldn't even think they're in there. So things like sports drinks are very high in sugar. Yogurt, sauces are a big one. Every kind of sauce, ketchup, barbecue, salad dressings, granola bars, cereal, peanut butter, bacon, deli meats, cereal. All of these foods are really high in sugar. And then things like fruit juices. And then there's just what the nutrition world calls hyperpalatable food, which means that it's food that's low in nutrients, but really high in calories. So basically things that turn into sugar, so those refined foods. And yes, so basically when we're eating these foods, it actually, there are two hormones, the hunger hormone called ghrelin and the hormone that makes us feel satisfied called leptin. And eating these foods actually increase that hunger hormone and decrease the satisfying hormone, which makes us overeat these foods even more, which is really interesting also. So yes, sugar is actually addicting.
Wow, that's really shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Landrie, I have a question for you. So we've been talking about cravings and addiction to food. So is there anything from a mental health standpoint? Is there any way we can like help move through these cravings?
Yeah. Actually, the quick little breathing exercise we did at the beginning, you can sort of build on that to use as a really helpful tool. Because in my world, I'm aware of addiction more from sort of the substance use aspect, and eating disorders goes sort of in line with that as well. When you're sort of I'm thinking of sort of a binge. So if you're kind of like halfway through a bag of chips or like me today, coming to the end of that sleeve of cookies, there's really not a whole lot that you can do when you're in the midst of a binge. You really just enjoy the food that you're eating. A lot of times if you're beating yourself up or being hypercritical of yourself, you're going to increase your stress. You're going to increase cortisol. And as we're talking about, that's not a good thing. So when you're eating food, enjoy the food that you're eating. If you're going to interrupt any type of cycle, it really has more to do with mindfulness when you're not already in that frame of mind. So it has a lot more to do about healthy habits up front rather than interrupting a binge or a craving. Like once you're already there, just enjoy it, tomorrow's a new day. But I think there's some things that you can do around creating more mindful eating habits, which from my perspective would be things like when you're sitting down to eat, really paying attention to the food that you're eating and enjoying it and tasting the flavors. And so that might look like maybe not watching TV while you're eating. That might be doing a 60-second meditation before you're eating. I don't know, sort of where people are is in terms of religion, but even just sitting down and saying a prayer or just being switching your mind into a grateful mindset can help reduce stress. So you can be anxious or you can be grateful. You can't really be both at the same time. So just saying, I'm really grateful for this food, or I'm really grateful for these things that happened today or this week. So creating mindfulness around eating, I would see as being really helpful.
Yes, a lot of the things you said are exactly the same things that I also tell my clients. So we're on the same page there.
Cool. Yeah, I have another question. So also kind of connecting to sugar, because I know you can have a crash after sugar. So I'm wondering, how does nutrition play into mood swings? I mean, mood swings is something I hear about all the time in counseling, people, having mood swings and depression and anxiety and how those kind of spiral off each other.
No, I understand, because what your life is, people.
I got it. How is nutrition and mood swings connected?
Yeah, so my silly saying is mood follows food. So whatever food you're eating, whatever the mood is going to reflect that food. Mm-hmm. I think the easiest way for me to explain this is just to use myself as an example. So let's just say I wake up in the morning and I need some energy. So I drink my coffee, which I didn't mention before, but spikes your blood sugar. And then I have my cereal, which we already know spikes blood sugar, and maybe some orange juice or a banana. So all of these things are going to, like I said, spike my blood sugar. So then what happens is, I don't know how familiar we are with this, but your insulin is pumped out through your pancreas, and that is the key to unlocking your cells so that the sugar can be stored. But when your blood sugar is spiked, you're going to be getting, your mood is going to change because of that, right? A symptom of that, you could be getting things like a headache or blurred vision, but it also causes mood changes, like you can get nervous. You can feel nervous from that. And then because your blood sugar spikes so high, a lot of insulin is going to be pumped out. So that's going to lead to a blood sugar crash. And then that's going to bring about things like yawning and brain fog, when you just feel like you cannot concentrate. But it also leads to depression, thoughts of depression. So my blood sugar has now fallen below normal, and all of that kind of stuff is happening to me. So then my stress nervous system kicks in, and to get my blood sugar up to a normal range will produce some stress hormones like cortisol, but it also produces, my adrenal glands produce adrenaline, and that kind of jump starts your blood sugar to get back into a normal range. So then that adrenaline is going to bring about symptoms that are exactly the same as anxiety. That also makes you hungry and irritable. You can even have like sweating. So basically, it's going to put you on a roller coaster ride. You're going to go way up and way down and way up throughout your day and night. It's going to lead to bad sleep and a host of other problems. It can lead to blood sugar dysregulation, which is basically what it is. It can lead to adrenal fatigue if your adrenals are overworked by trying to keep your blood sugar in a normal range. It can lead to things like insulin resistance. So getting into this cycle of eating these kind of foods is really detrimental to your health, actually, and puts you on that roller coaster, which can then give you cravings and mood swings, basically.
So what I'm hearing is, you eat something, and if it has sugar in it, you're gonna shoot up, and then you're gonna crash below, and then to kind of even out, then your body's producing adrenaline. Is that okay? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And adrenaline, I would say, 90% of people who come in to counseling are dealing with anxiety, and if only people realized how much their food is causing some of that, especially I would say caffeine. So how do you get off of that roller coaster? What's the answer?
Yeah. And the effects of sugar you might not see it immediately. It can be something that once you get on this roller coaster, it gets worse. It might be even like over a few years of time. But what we're going to do first and foremost, which I'm sure you already know, is cut those refined carbs and sugar. So basically, I never tell clients to just cut something out. I want them to replace it. I don't want them to ever feel like they're depriving themselves of something. So we're going to replace it with something. And what are we going to replace it with? Which is fat. And I know there's a big misconception of fat that, we shouldn't be eating fat because it makes us fat. But actually it's really important for your health. And fat is the thing that gives us this low burning energy to get us throughout our day. Without any crashes. Specifically to mental health, our brain is made up of 60% fat. So that seems pretty important in itself. Yes. Every single cell in our body, the outer layer is called the lipid bilayer, and that is fat. And fat is the precursor to all of our hormones. And then also it absorbs certain vitamins like vitamin D, E, and A, and K. So in order to keep those vitamins in our body, we need that fat. It controls inflammation, and most importantly to us, one of the important things to us is that it gives us a satisfied feeling of being full, which is what we need, especially when we're trying to avoid, those refined carbs.
Right. So help me with the fat thing, because immediately what's coming to mind is like bacon, fried food. So what do you mean by fat? What kind of fat should we be eating?
Good question, because not all fat is created equally, right? And I'm going to explain this now, but it is going to be on the PDF. So if you put your email in the chat box, then I'll be able to send you this PDF, and you don't have to worry about writing it down or remembering anything. There's going to be some other things on the PDF that I didn't mention before, but there's going to be a whole list of names that companies use instead of sugar, because they know we're looking for that word, sugar. So they are legally allowed to use dozens of other names. So in that PDF, you'll see that list of names. I think it's going to be really helpful for us to be little detectives to find sugar in the foods that we buy. But back to fat. So basically, polyunsaturated fats are going to be our vegetable oils, not avocado oil, but a lot of our oils are polyunsaturated. That's our essential fatty acids, basically. So if you've heard of omega-3s and omega-6s, those are the polyunsaturated fats.
Those are the good ones.
Those are good ones, yes, because essential fatty acids, the essential part means that our body cannot make those fats. So we have to get them from other sources. So it's really important that we do take in these fats. But the thing about these fats is that they are unstable when they come into contact with light or heat. So light or heat makes them oxidize. So when we're buying oils, we want to make sure that they are in a dark container, something that light cannot get through. And we want to make sure they're cold pressed. If they're not cold pressed, then the manufacturer has used heat to expel that oil. Okay. And then obvious things like we don't want to be eating fried foods. So the good fats that we need to be eating are going to be things like wild caught fish, avocados, nuts and seeds, including like hemp seeds and flax seeds, pasture raised eggs, and then grass-fed meat, grass-fed dairy. When it comes to oils and butters, which you can add into the foods that you're cooking, like for instance, oatmeal. If you're someone who eats oatmeal in the morning, you can be adding a nut butter to it, but you can also be adding some oil, coconut oil, something like that. So coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, all those are great fats.
What about, I'm thinking of like dark containers. I'm thinking lard comes in a dark container. Where is lard on the continuum of bad and good?
Yeah, so lard is one of those things that have a really bad connotation to it. But if we're going to be using lard is good for heating. Because it is a stable fat. So that is something that we would want to use if we are going to be heating it to high temperatures, actually.
Okay. So I have a question. You mentioned oatmeal, which makes me think of breakfast. So I was sort of on an intermittent fasting kick for a little while. Still not sure if I liked it or not, but I would generally stop eating around maybe like 6 o'clock in the evening, and then not eat until I think like around noon. So I wasn't really eating breakfast. What do you think about breakfast? How does that play into, is that helpful for managing stress, or what would you say to that?
eating your breakfast seems like an old wives' tale, right? It's like my mom always told me that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But going to intermittent fasting can actually, especially for women, middle-aged women or menstruating women, basically, can be really detrimental to our health. And especially if you are someone who doesn't have, if your adrenal glands are not in tip-top shape. So if you have any sort of blood sugar dysregulation, it's going to make your health way worse. So basically intermittent fasting, if not intermittent fasting, we'll put it, just go straight forward with this, is going to put you in that sympathetic mode. So it's going to put you in that stress mode. And like we know, that's definitely not good for us. But yes, so eating breakfast, a lot of people I hear just say, I don't feel like eating breakfast. I'm not hungry in the morning. And that itself is a sign that blood sugar regulation is off. You have some sort of blood sugar dysregulation because our cortisol spikes at the wrong time when we have that dysregulation. So it's going to be something where it's going to be like going to sleep earlier. The time just changed, right? So we need to go to sleep at a different time. So we don't really feel like going to sleep earlier. We don't really feel like waking up earlier, but we know we have to. So we go to bed even though we're not tired yet. So it's going to be the same thing with breakfast. We're going to eat fat in the morning, even if we don't feel like it, because we are trying to get our hormones in the right rhythm. Our rhythm is off right now. Our hormones are being produced at the wrong time. So we're going to be proactive and eat that breakfast even if we don't want to.
So I would like to, pat myself on the back. Even though I mentioned I ate a sleeve of cookies today, I did eat a healthy breakfast with healthy fat. So it wasn't all bad.
Proud.
It wasn't all bad today. So I guess that kind of brings us to, when you think about I'm thinking the big picture, what are all of those, what are all sort of, I'm kind of summarizing all the things that you said. Like I've heard you talk about really talking about the sympathetic, parasympathetic states. We've talked about sugar and substituting, not just taking sugar out, but adding fat, substituting, I guess. What else am I missing?
Yeah, so subbing that bread for something fatty, and then eating breakfast. And we also want to remember that by the time your blood sugar has dropped, you're already on that roller coaster, right? It's so be proactive about that and eat your breakfast and eat fat for breakfast. And then the other thing I want to mention is how stress, when we're in that parasympathetic or that sympathetic state, how it can lead to digestion dysfunction. So I mentioned that when we're in that parasympathetic state, our body is able to digest and rest and etc. When we're in a stress state, our body does not give our gut the resources it needs. So our acid is lowered in our stomach. The blood that needs to flow to our gut doesn't, because it's in our extremities. That's what happens when we're in a stress state. So it's going to lead to things like bloating or acid reflux, nausea, nutrient deficiencies for sure. And that can be shown also in, like when I mentioned earlier, that weak hair, weak nails, that sort of thing. So that shows that our food is not getting digested properly. And for someone like me who puts a lot of effort into making sure they're buying the right foods and eating the right foods, if the foods we're eating are not actually getting digested well and absorbed well, then I just, threw away a lot of money by buying that organic food or whatever I'm doing. So we want to make sure that we are actually digesting and absorbing all those nutrients in the good food that we're eating. In order to do that, we have to put ourselves into a parasympathetic state before we eat. Of course, it's ideal that we're in a parasympathetic state most of the time, but specifically, it's really important to do it before we eat. So I tell clients some other things that your mom or grandmother probably told you: to chew really thoroughly, to chew a lot. And I started the habit of putting my fork down in between each bite that I sometimes remember, sometimes don't. But that's a really good habit to have. It just gives yourself time to really enjoy the food and chew it thoroughly. So it puts less stress on our digestive system when we're chewing that food more. And what you mentioned earlier is when you eat, only eat. There's a lot of studies that show that when you're watching TV, when you're eating more, you're eating faster, and you're not digesting that food as well. Yeah. So concentrate on your food when you're eating. Let that be the only thing that you're doing.
So I'm hearing you say it's not only making sure you're putting foods in your body that are going to help regulate your mood, but it also, if you're eating those foods, it might not even really matter if you're not digesting it properly.
Yeah, if you're eating that fat and you're still in a stress state when you're eating that good fat, or those and that good food, then yeah, it's going to just go through us, or it's going to give us problems, like that bloating or things like that. So those are the things I tell clients to get into that relaxed state. But I feel like you would have a lot of tips on this also. Yeah. So do you have anything to get us into a relaxed state?
Absolutely. Several things come to mind. There's a few really, really easy things that you can do that will help ground you into the present moment. Because a lot of anxiety has to do around like thinking about thinking about the past or worrying about the future. And so these things kind of help ground you, but it's also switching you, from a stressed state to a relaxed state. So there's a few things. One is called 5 things. And I'll have you all do this with me now, just silently. If you look around the room where you are, and name 5 things that you can see, so for me, it's the doorknob, the lamp, my jacket, a plant, and a mirror. Okay, so 5 things that I can see. So this would be really great to do when you've got your food, you're sitting down. Take a moment, take a few deep breaths, and orient yourself to the present. 5 things that you can see. 4 things that are touching you physically. So for me, it's my shorts, my feet on the floor, the tag, in the back of my shirt, and maybe my hair on my shoulder. 4 things that I can feel. 3 things that I can hear: my voice, crickets outside, the fan. 2 things that you can smell, and something that you can taste. So yeah, I just had water, or those cookies I ate earlier that we'll forget about. So just grounding to the present moment. That's a really easy one you can do. There's another one called square breathing or square breath. And what helps us switch from a stress state to a relaxed state is having a really long exhale. Because if you're breathing fast, that means you're ready to go, right? It's fight, flight, or freeze. Like we're on guard, ready for danger. We're in a stressed state. So elongating your exhale can kind of clue your body into, oh, wait, I wouldn't be taking this long, gentle breath if there was danger around. So the square, so I have my notebook. It's not exactly a square, but it'll work. So taking an inhale, holding it, and then a long exhale. So 2 sides of the square for the exhale. So if you were doing that with me, and what I have asked clients to do is actually trace a square on their leg or on their arm. So just another way of tactile grounding yourself to the present moment. So if you can all do it with me from the comfort of your own home. Inhale, hold, and long exhale. And inhale, hold, and long exhale. That's just called square breath. And again, that's something that you can do anytime. You can do it in public. Nobody's going to notice what you're doing. You can just trace a square on your leg. So those are 2 really easy ways to switch from a stressed survival brain mode to relaxed, grounded. Let's see, we're kind of coming up on time already. So if you haven't already, just throw your email in the chat box so we can send you the PDF. But yeah, Alexa, any kind of closing thoughts, summary, big takeaways?
Unmute myself. I think that's about it. I just want to say that if anybody has any questions, that you will have my email. If you put your email in there, you'll have my email, and you can ask me there or go to my website, navigatingnutrients.com. And I just want to say thank you for everybody that showed up and everybody that will watch the recording of this, for putting some time in for yourself and learning about how to care for your body in a better way.
Yeah. Well, Alexa, thank you so much. I am really excited to have partnered with my sister and fellow healthcare worker, to do this presentation. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone who was here. You can keep in contact with both of us, Alexa at Navigating Nutrients, and for me, it's just LandrieEthredge.com for counseling mental health. So I hope you all have a lovely evening, and we'll see you next month. I'm doing a workshop the second Sunday of, April. Second Sunday of April. It's all about toxic relationships, how to identify red flags, what to do about those red flags when we see them. Definitely can be helpful for you or friends or family members who you think may be in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. So tune in then. Everybody have a great evening, and